Well, hello again and welcome back. Got something a little bit unusual this week. I'm very delighted to welcome my guest, Kimberly Para. Hi, Kimberly.
Hey, Anne.
And we have not known each other very long, but Kim has a really interesting system which she designed herself. Kim is an educator and she deals with children and has also personally had issues with ADHD and dyslexia. And well, I'll let Kim tell you the story, but she has designed a really interesting and useful system which helps people of any age get to grips with those problems. Because, of course, if you can't read, you really are held back on all fronts. So, Kim, over to you. Where would you like to start?
Well, people usually ask me, like, how did you develop and what problems did you have growing up with dyslexia and ADHD? So, if you want, we can start with the history of like how it got developed over time. But growing up with dyslexia, I used to see words transpose themselves. That means, like, if you had the word boat, I would see it backwards. So I'd see TAOB, and they would represent themselves, backwards, and they would flip. So another way that another layer of that, a different type of dyslexia, because there's over 12 different types, um, is that the words would swirl around the page, which was a kind of induced stress. And so, if you are really stressed as a student, you might have stress induced dyslexia, like I did. And to get the words to go back to being on the page without swirling around and without getting disorientated, it takes some practice. I had a really smart second grade teacher who realized I was struggling. Of course, we didn't really know what dyslexia was, but they recognized patterns. And so she gave me a ruler to kind of help steady the words on the page and to help keep me focused on one sentence at a time. And through rereading that sentence over and over again, I was kind of, in essence, flashing the words in front of me over and over again until I memorized them. That slowed down my reading progress quite a lot. I got behind, and I was basically a C student, and I was struggling, to keep those C's. But I was grateful that I had a second grade teacher that recognized, the patterns in me and what to do to help with my stress so that I could at least perform as, a C level.
Well, yes, I agree, because it's fairly unusual, or it was more unusual, I suppose, for teachers to pick up these issues that children are suffering with, far less have a method of working through it and actually being helpful.
Yeah, and she was very encouraging, and I remember her working one on one with me and telling me that it was going to be okay and that we were going to work through it. But I also remember being very frustrated knowing that I wasn't on level and I was never going to be at the top of the class. And that, and at home, I didn't have a very supportive home, and it wasn't really their fault. They just didn't have enough information at the time. It was 1977, 78. So there wasn't enough information out there to help my parents, and or very many educators to figure out, how to help me even more and how to get on top. Every student wants to succeed, but if you don't have that available to you and you don't have the tool set or the skill set, then it causes a lot of friction. It causes a lot of self-confidence to go down. So I recognize that in my students, even some gifted students have trouble with reading. And so I'm able to help those students through my method, through my flash method, overcome those obstacles. And it's a delight to know that everything I went through wasn't for nothing. It was to help develop this method so that I could help bring about change for these kids.
Right. So you mentioned that it was kind of, you related it to hieroglyphics, because this is how the brain actually learns. Would you like to go into some detail on that?
Sure. So 4,000 years ago, we weren't reading. We were using pictures. And the first picture that was basically written down in, I guess you would say a letter format, but a picture format that we can recall in history would have been the A that was actually upside down. So if you can, make a V with your hand and then cross it over upside down, the horns on a bull were the first word, and it actually meant the word, not a sound, like ah. It meant an actual animal. And so over time, over thousands of years, different peoples and cultures would pick apart uh, those vocabulary words, and they would make them into sounds, and those sounds would be represented by those symbols, and they would be changed over time depending on who was doing what, when, where, and who was conquering that land. So I've noticed that we're not born readers. This is something that's we've evolved into. We used to communicate through pictures, through writing on cave walls, and writing in the sand, and communicating, even in numbers, and also with ideas about where things are by literally drawing in the sand or writing on, like through charcoal on a cave wall or something. So knowing that, this isn't a natural ability, we're having to make sense of it all. But the thing that we can rely on, and the thing that I can bring to the table that we've probably forgotten about, is that we used to rely on pictures in order to communicate. And the way that I use them is I flash a flashcard 10 to 15 times in front of a child, and I'm able to help the brain center in on the picture of the word, and then take in the information all at once, and be able to recall it um, at a short-term memory, and then through practice into long-term memory. So I'm relying on that, those thousands of years that we've communicated through making pictures, through helping me help kids by being able to tangibly grab that information off that flashcard.
Okay, so Kim, you just held up a flashcard, a word rather than
Yes,
a picture, and it said Africa.
yes,
So are you training your students to see words as pictures in some sort of way?
yes. That's in essence what is happening. So as I'm holding up the word Africa in front of you, you notice that it's capitalized, it's got a big A, small f, RICA, right? So to a person who understands lettering, phonetics, and sounds, that's Africa. Okay. And that's through phonetics. There's blends in there, there's patterns. But to someone who is dyslexic, it just looks like a bunch of letters. There's no rhyme or reason why it's there. And they don't understand sometimes the sounds, or why you put those letters together in that particular order. So what I'm trying to help them do is develop their frontal lobe of their brain to capture the picture as I'm flashing. So as we're talking, I'm flashing the card Africa in front of me. So we're going 1, 2, 3, and we're saying it: Africa, 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 Africa. And about between the 10th and the 15th time I flash it, the brain relaxes. And in some children, they actually sigh, or they cue me by looking relaxed. Their jaw drops a little bit, and it cues me into the brain actually resonating with capturing the whole entire word. And then I cover it up, and then they write the word in its entirety, usually, as they're developing this frontal lobe, memory system that's already in their brain.
Oh, this is really interesting. So I presume with adults it works the same way, even though they might have to forget a lot of other learnings.
No, they don't. What's so brilliant about it is you don't have to forget any learnings. All I'm doing is I'm building a bridge from from everything that you've learned, and and everything maybe you didn't learn, and building a bridge from point A to point B so that you can cross it and you can make sense of all the rest of the information that you have learned in the past. And it's building new neural networks. So imagine it like a train station, okay? So the main train station takes you from, let's say, London to, I don't know, another city in England. Help me out here. What's
Oh,
another one?
Huntington.
Okay, so we're building a train station and a railway from Huntington to London and vice versa, right? So instead of saying, we have to throw that out, we're just going to add some more places, okay, to make it faster. So you might have one from Huntington to another city, you know,
Peterborough.
yeah, absolutely. So all we're doing is making it stronger, making it faster, and making you able to go more places.
That's interesting. And how long would it take a person to get the hang of this, to grasp the process?
So we've seen growth. I have one gentleman that tried it 7 days ago, and he has already mastered the first week, and he had the ability to read 0 words when he started. So imagine not being able to read at all and just barely knowing his letters. He couldn't always remember the sounds of each of the letters, but now that he's practicing the flashing, we're starting to build those neural networks so that the sounds actually make sense of where they go along with the lettering. And now that he's able to picture it in his brain, he's able to give assignment to those blends and zone in more on how they all work together.
Okay. So when a person begins to learn this method, is it necessary to practice every day?
Yes. So I suggest that anyone doing this, the commitment level isn't very much, but it is something that needs to be practiced out of the 7 days, 5 days a week. 2 times a day is optimal, but I've seen some students just do it one. It just delays the progress. But I would say that it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you do it 5 days back to back, then the brain will assimilate and build those neural pathways so that everything kind of speeds up. And the goal is to learn the words, the patterns go in to play, the spelling goes into play, the sounds go into play automatically by themselves. There's really nothing to do because the brain is so magnificent and so awesome and infinite that it really doesn't need any other thing except to do, the flashing and practice. And then the hope is to graduate. So we've seen graduation happen with sixth grade words. After 6 months, they progressed where they no longer need to flash words anymore. We've seen it happen at 3 months. So it just depends on the child, how voracious they are, how the neural networks form in their brains. And then the hope is to no longer need the method.
This is great because it's something to look forward to. It's a real goal
Right.
that this path of learning is not forever. It's just a
Yeah.
case of getting you from your starting point to, well, it's like launching a rocket, isn't it? Once the
Yeah,
thing's off the ground, it's got its own momentum.
absolutely. And then it'll be a distant memory about how they learn to read. And then if they ever need it again, then I can help them reiterate and help them study chunks of information and retain those things. Because the way that the ADHD brain works and the dyslexic, and if they have both, then it's multi-layered. But there's not really a disability. It's more that they're neuro diverse and it just works in a different way. So once I show them how their brain actually works, it no longer is hindering them. It's not holding them back anymore, and they just take off on a trajectory of their own accord. So I work with certain students that have maybe some obstacles in their way. Maybe we need to change the color up. Maybe they don't work so well in black, but they work better in blue. Maybe their favorite color is purple. I don't really know, but we try different things and I tweak it in different ways for the children. But normally they're able to follow along on my website and they really don't need me, which is kind of weird when you think about it as an educator. You're like, well, when are they going to need me? One of the great things that I've heard so far is that I'm sorry we haven't checked in. We're just on week 4 now. And you told us that, once we, mastered and with the spelling test at the end of the week, that we could go on to the next week. So we kind of did that. So we're sorry we didn't check in, but we kind of don't need you anymore. So it's like, wow, that's awesome.
That is awesome to be told that you're not needed and
You're like,
to be
okay.
delighted about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, "Okay, great." Well, and then they feed me the information, they say, "Well, the child got everything right this week, so I hope you don't mind, but we skipped a day and we're going on to the next week." And they expect me to say something, contrary or hold them back, but I'm like, "Hey, I think that's great. Thank you for teaching me that I need to, let you go ahead because, you obviously know what your child needs best and your child knows what they need best. So we just let them go ahead and at their own pace. And I think we're finding more and more that neurodiversity is playing a big part in here. And now that we're kind of experimenting with, different ways of learning, the sky's the limit for these kids. And their confidence level is building at such a rate that it even appears that they have a photogenic or photographic mind. So it's happening quite rapidly that they're able to retain that information and hold on to it for longer periods of time. And also the retention and being able to recall is much greater. It's at least at 70 to 80% before they move up another level. And then when that happens, they're no longer struggling, around 60 or 70%. They're at the 90 percentile range, which is, unheard of.
Ah, this is just so impressive. I'm I've got your website. It's www.flashcardread.com.
Yeah.
And of
And
course I'll
And
oh
for your
fantastic.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and
Um
for your listeners that are on YouTube, I did make a QR code, but like you said, and you did a wonderful job telling them about, flashcardread.com, and they can message me through the website if they like, or they can also get on Facebook. I don't know if this helps you or not, but
fine. Well, it's all different um visual aids going up
yeah,
on the screen. But
yeah,
anyone who's not watching
yeah.
the visuals at the moment, you can find all the stuff at www.flashcardread.com.
Thank you.
And got one more question for you, Kim.
Yes,
Has
ma'am.
anyone ever said, this sounds too good to be true, it's got to be a scam, or other silly things like that?
Yes, it really is unbelievable. Until you try it out, until you get a kid in front of the screen, it really is mind-boggling because we're skirting around so many issues and we're building this pathway at a rapid pace. And a lot of people are asking me, what about phonetics, what about blending, what about all of this stuff that a kid needs to learn in school? And I'm saying I think it's great. I think all of it is wonderful and needed, and it all comes into effect. But what I'm doing is just building that bridge from point A to point B and saying that I'm making it possible and easier for these kids to learn at a better rate. And some that are just having so much trouble reading, we're building a concrete bridge for them because they're not able to learn unless this bridge is built.
Wow. So, people, please, will you spread the word? This is important news. It needs to reach as many people as possible. And thank you again, Kim, for coming to tell us all about your system. I'm really impressed. And I wish you such success with it.
Thank
It's
you.
only a question of getting the word out there, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah,
magic.
yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. And there's much more to come. I do help with coaching with anybody that has ADHD problems and retaining information for, say, like tests, ACTs, SATs, just general information. If you're a bad test taker, I do coach one-on-one and to help find out what your obstacles are and to break them down and make it easier to retain the information.
Well, there you go. And you work online, naturally, we know that.
Yeah.
But do you take one-on-one interpersonal students as well in the
Yes,
States?
and I help parents help their kids, and when they learn what's involved, they just their minds blown because it doesn't take a whole lot to help your kid, and once I teach it to you, or in yourself, you won't really need me for that many coaching sessions, maybe even one. So I'm really putting myself out of work rather quickly.
You are, but I think you'll probably get your reward from the universe because you certainly deserve it. I really think that you've invented something unique and
Yeah.
so useful.
Yeah, it's amazing how I've just kind of seen patterns. Really, I haven't invented anything. Everything that to evolve education is already inside of us, and all I'm doing is noticing patterns. So that's
Absolutely, but other people haven't done it, and that's what you need to be congratulated for.
well, I appreciate you, and I thank you from my humble little heart because my goal is to go global and to help as many kids and parents as possible that are struggling because I know what it's like, and I don't want anybody to have to suffer like I did.
Mm, wonderful. Well, I wish you every success. It's a real mission. And talk about purpose. Wow. Yeah, you've got a purpose. So
Thank
thank
you.
you again, Kim. And I hope this little session that we've done helps.
I appreciate you.